Hello and welcome to Artifacts, the monthly show on City Cable 34, in which we talk about the arts and events that are going on in Minneapolis. Later on, we'll have Georgia Stevens in talking about dance and Blah Blah Blah, which is a cabaret that focuses on movement and dance. But right now, it's a pleasure to introduce Dudley Riggs, who's been making people laugh and think in Minneapolis and the Twin Cities for quite a while. Dudley, thanks for being on the show.
Good to see you.
Sure. Dudley Riggs Theaters and the Instant Theater go back in this town how long?
Ooh, several Democratic administrations.
That's ancient.
We opened originally in Minneapolis in 1958, and so we've been running continually since '58. We started, the Instant Theater Company started in New York in 1954, and so this is one of the towns that we toured through and found a willing audience here, and so we've stayed.
Well, that's great.
Have never regretted that switch, because this has been a very good town for theater.
Well, it has.
And getting better all the time.
Well, and you mentioned a key word, theater. I've got a hunch that a lot of folks think Dudley Riggs, comedy, and they pretty much stop their thought process there. But you are a theater company writing and producing new shows every year, more than one a year.
We do. We present 3 or 4 productions a year, and they are always on current events material and on issues of the day. We pride ourselves in being nonpartisan in our political position. We say actually that it's, well, the motto is positive neutrality and promiscuous hostility.
Promiscuous hostility.
And so we like to be the loyal opposition to both parties. So currently we're working on something that encompasses both sides of the upcoming election, and in fact we even have something to say about the third leg there that fell off. So
a certain candidate that pulled out at the last minute there.
But that kind of one of the disadvantages of the kind of theater we do is that since it is to a fair degree based upon current events, we are not really able to announce a year ahead what we will be doing. If you were to say, what are we expecting to be doing in January, I will generally have to say it'll wait and see what's in the paper in November and December before we know what's going to go on the show in January.
6 or 8 months is a long time in a topical sense.
Indeed, and in fact the shows are constantly changing, and as the show evolves over the course of the run, it's an organic thing. It'll change depending on events of the time, and occasionally we will lose a whole portion of the show due to changing events, and we'll substitute new pieces.
And that relates to changes, say, month to month or even week to week. Have you noticed a trend since 1958 or 54 in the climate of America, or maybe in the Twin Cities, a change in the sensibility or the approach to what's going on in our world?
Well, I think I'm worried. I think we're re-entering the Eisenhower years in many sense of the word. We are. It's becoming, the audiences are considerably more conservative than they were before. We have, I'm discovering that the items that in 1975 would have not been considered controversial are now very controversial. And so in a sense, it's sort of the pendulum is swinging back. But that's good, because we've been in both of these. We were in the Eisenhower years and did very well.
Are you dusting off old material?
Well, actually, looking at sometimes taking a step backwards in the right direction, because it is clear to me that that as the climate cools down and becomes more conservative, there is always a segment of the population that is more thinking and are looking deeper into things, and those become our audience. And that's the primary thing. We have to have an audience that reads and is interested in current events.
Audience. What about your talent pool, the actors and your crew and your artistic directors and those folks?
Well, this is a great town for theater, as you know, because we have, there's certainly more work here for actors. And most of the actors at the workshop have come up through the ranks of the workshop, taking classes, improvisation classes, and then frequently they'll end up in our touring group. perhaps being there for a year or two, and then they will join the resident company where they'll stay for a period of time. And then frequently they'll go off to Disney World or somewhere and come back later and teach, you know. So it's, there is a kind of a cycling in and out of the talent pool. We have never at any time found that there's any shortage of talent in this city. There's a great amount of talent here, and unfortunately you can't always get all of it on stage. Sometimes there are a lot of people out there that we would like to see on stage that we haven't managed to get there yet.
Right. Well, time's come.
But,
now, you mentioned a few of the things that you do in addition to your main stage shows, your topical shows. Could you outline a little bit more about those different elements of the theater company?
Well, we do, obviously we have these, we have our little school that we refer to. We teach acting classes and improvisation classes. We also have a student outreach program that is just going to be starting up in earnest this fall. And we have an apprentice program where we have talented people who are experienced and talented, but who have not as yet had a professional job. And so those people are coming into the workshop as well. And then, of course, we're always interested in doing touring. We go to colleges. We do, we play, we do a fair number of shows for corporations. And, you know, sort of auxiliary work, if you will. But it all comes back to that main show that happens 7 times a week at the theater.
Right.
So,
And then on Saturday night, you're still doing your improv at...
improvisation at we say at midnight, but it's really a little after midnight on Sunday morning. And that's become a very popular late night thing to do. For many years, that was the only late night thing in town. Now there's quite a lot to do at that hour, and it's a really interesting thing to watch this happen in the city, because we have, it used to be that people would say that Minneapolis shuts down when the bars close, but it's not true anymore.
That's right, right. And thanks partly to the improv, too. We kept that going. In just a moment, we're going to be able to take a look at a show that you did, I think, called The American Scream. Could you tell us briefly what that was about, and then we'll take a quick look at that?
Yes, this is, I always say, this is an evening of excerpts, because the whole thing would be too much. But it's an hour of selected pieces from the Brave New Workshop repertory that appeared first last January on KTCA and has been rebroadcast a number of times on public television. And this particular piece is paying homage to Robert Bly and to Sam Keane and the Fire in the Belly crowd, as well as making a comment about this fascination with health clubs.
Okay, so The Sensitive Men.
Right.
Okay, let's take a look at this, The American Scream.
All in one day, Jim.
Ah, boy, nice shot, man. You almost knocked the wind out of me.
Thanks. Welcome to the Wild Man's Health Club, Jim.
Thanks.
I mean, it's the only place where you can get in touch with your feelings while you're getting in shape.
Yeah, for only $500 a month.
This is an incredible facility, guys.
Great.
Yeah, we got a sweat lodge over there. We got a drumming and weeping room over there.
Yeah, and there's a room down the hall where you can put up a picture of your father and you can tell him things that you never got to tell him when you were a kid.
Okay, Dave. What? This is the hunt and confront room, man. Right?
Thanks.
You know, this is the only club where men can be real men.
Yeah. I mean, there's no ancient rituals in our culture anymore. There's no true rites of passage, and so men turn into mush, just like Peter over here.
I'm not mush.
I'm sorry, Peter, but you're turning into mush.
All right.
What's he mean?
Well, that account I was working on?
The one you put all that overtime in.
Yeah, Henderson gave it to the new guy.
What? Pete, you gotta confront Henderson on something that important.
All right, I'm just afraid of him, all right?
Yeah, well, look who's here, Pete.
Ah, my boss! My boss!
I'm the new guy!
Well, that was fun. And I recognized a couple of those actors in there, and that gets back to what you're saying about talent pool. And
Sure. Jim Detmar, Peter Stalock, and Dane Stauffer, who all of whom have been in our company in recent years and who came back and graciously appeared in this production, and have, of course, had a kind of an ongoing relationship with the theater.
Now, you mentioned that was kind of a pastiche of various
I think-
routines or bits you've
I
liked
think
over
we
the years.
originally recorded about 27 or 28 pieces, and so, I mean, there's a lot more there that hasn't been seen yet, but it's a matter of trying, when you're doing a kind of a magazine format for these, both on our stage and in television. I think it's rather compounded in television because people are used to little short blips, and there is frequently no little thread that runs through that ties it and makes it into a play as such. Usually what we do is tied into a theme, but in the case of that KTCA piece, there was no theme at all. So.
And having seen it, though, it worked. I mean,
Sure. But that's, we ask the audience to make up for that deficit in their own minds, and I think they do very well. In the same way that the audience uses their imagination to help us create on stage. As you know, we use minimal props and minimal makeup, and that's probably more dressed than most of our shows. It happens.
And you're talking about stagecraft there, not the costumes they were wearing.
And so we come to a time where we will ask the audience to believe something, and then they help to create the illusion. Otherwise, it would be a little cumbersome because we have only 140 square feet of stage. So
That's right.
Makes it, and we've always had something that small.
Right.
And if we were to suddenly have a huge budget, we would probably still only have 140 square feet.
Large auditorium and still a focus like that. Well, we've got a few moments left, and I want to talk about the show that you're opening this month, August here of.
The new show is called Mad in the USA.
You've got a.
It is about anger. It's about politics. It's about various ways of dealing with anger, and I think it's quite timely. The subtitle for the show is "Riot, You'll Like It," and we hope everyone will come and will like it without necessarily rioting. But it is very political, and it's very much dealing with the fact that everyone is carrying a much higher level of anger these days than they would like.
Well, and there's tension right in your title and subtitle there. I mean, the riot coming out of what's happened here in this country, around the country the last so many months and things. You like to stay on that edge.
Well, I think that if we have a purpose, we have to look for the enemy. I mean, I'm always looking, where is the enemy? What's going to be the most troubling thing that will be bothering our audience 3 months from now? And frequently lately it's the economy, and sometimes it's been wars, sometimes it's been domestic problems. But we're sort of constantly trying to find that and then deal with it in a way that does not particularly take a position, but will illuminate other options, and trying to show that there are multiple sides to all of these issues and trying to get a little better understanding, and in some cases trying to get people to be a little riled up and be a little more demanding, and see if we can bring about change.
Thoughtful theater, and a theater with a little bit of stimulation to it.
Yeah, we like to think that we're doing comedy theater for thinking people. So,
Dudley, thanks for coming on the show.
Indeed,
It's been fun.
Thank you.
We'll be putting a number up there as to how you can get in touch with the Dudley Riggs Theaters if you want to find out about show times and what's going on. And in a moment, we'll have Georgia Stevens out to talk about what she's involved in. But first, this interesting fact about the arts in Minneapolis.
Facilitate the possible resolution.
And welcome back. In this part of the show, I'm pleased to introduce to you and somebody that I hadn't met in person, Georgia Stevens, who wears many hats in the artistic world. She's a dancer, a choreographer, an actor, and even a writer. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks.
Pleased to have you here. There are a number of things I want to talk with you about, maybe starting out with a little bit about you, but I don't want to forget later talking about what they're calling a cabaret, the blah, blah, blah. And I know that's coming up later this month, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But
Okay.
First I wanted to get to know you a little bit better. What all do you do with your different artistic disciplines here?
I'm all over the map. I'd say right now I'm calling myself, it seems like the main word is performer, because I am a dancer and I am, I have trained in dance for a really long time, but I've always been a writer. And so now I'm also delving into the world of characters, so I'm having to learn some acting skills that would help me do that. Also, a side hobby I have is making soundtracks for people in their productions.
For their creative productions?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
And I do it for my own too.
And for your own. What are some of the projects you've worked on then, both your own and for other folks?
I've mainly done my own, but I've helped other dancers. Probably nobody that you would have heard of. Local people come to me and just ask how to do certain things, if they can combine, sound effects with the sound of, feet walking around the room combined with music, and then I show them how to do it, and I do it for them.
And that's something they'd want so that an audience might get that aural sense while they're watching their performance or something like that.
Right.
Well, how about some of your own productions? I know you did one last fall, the fall of '91, that got some good publicity and hopefully great audiences and things like that. Tell us a little bit about what that production was and what you were trying to say in it and that sort of thing.
It was called O Moon of Amalia Menia.
Okay. And you've got a graphic from that, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you hold that up and we'll take a look at what that is. Okay, now what was that about?
Actually, it was the final version of the Moon Project, and the Moon Project is something I was commissioned to do by Overtones, the Southern Theater's thing that they do in collaboration with music. And so I collaborated with the new music ensemble Zeitgeist, and we did the Moon Project.
Okay.
And that was a work in progress, and then a year later, Zeitgeist and I got back together and expanded on it, and it's, it was about many things. It was about the patriarchy and the matriarchy, and it was about Artemis and Ishtar and some well-known goddesses and a rocket scientist named Dr. Miriam, who was John Munger. And I played the character Artemis, and this is how I really got into, I'm really getting interested in acting and some activities that can help me improve on that.
So this is provocative for you as well then? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
You kind of got involved.
It was new
in-
territory
Right.
for a lot of us because, it was also the first time I used material from my company members. They, at the beginning of each rehearsal, we would come in and write in our diaries in character, and I used some of that material to provide the text.
Okay, now that's an interesting way to create a piece, I would think. Is that common or typical to work on a kind of a group or?
It is pretty common. It hasn't been for me. I've been more of a dictator, but I just got tired of it. I mean, I work with such talented people, and they feel like they're more a part of the process. I think if I, if I use their material, and I'm very careful to credit when I do, that.
How does that feel changing from the dictator to the more collaborative system? I mean, must
It
be a little
feels
learning.
good, yeah. I mean, it doesn't, it's a little scary because, they might not come up with something, and I go, well, I don't know.
Or maybe they come
And
up
then
with something that
and then
you
I
hadn't
have
been
to
thinking of.
intervene. Yeah, that's right, right.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's okay with them if I say, okay, I like that, but how about if we change it? And it just goes sideways with it because it'll fit in better if I can.
How does this
adjust
gel?
it.
I mean, you're sitting at home or maybe rehearsing on your own or something. Do you get an idea and you call somebody, like you mentioned, John Munger, and say, I've got an idea, do you want to help me work on it? How do you pull the thoughts and the creative inspiration into what an audience ultimately sees on stage?
Well, before I get too far along, I have to have done a lot of that work myself in my notebook alone, and maybe I can ask people in conversations to, bounce some things off them, but I have to have it pretty well shaped out in order to ask for funding. And then if I get the funding, I do the project. And I've been fairly fortunate in, I haven't gotten everything I've wanted, but I've, gotten enough to keep going.
So
for a while.
working in Minneapolis, the Minneapolis area has felt pretty good in terms of support and interest. Are you from here originally?
No, I'm from St. Louis.
Missouri? What brought you here?
A lot of things, the art climate, the financial support system, the Minnesota Dance Alliance, which used to be MICA. It was called the Minnesota Independent Choreographers Alliance. And I visited the year that they incorporated. And I came back to visit again, and I did something at the Choreographers Evening at the Walker. A friend of mine, Wendy Morris, who also went to college in St. Louis, did it, and invited me to be in it, and I was just overwhelmed. Well, back then it was like, I get to perform and I don't have to pay for it.
Right. You got a little support to do it and
Right.
exhibit your own creativity.
And, and it used to be free. That's just recently changed, but it's still very inexpensive.
The choreographers.
Right, yeah, the
evenings.
choreographers evening, and so, it gets
That's a
filled and
great
audiences,
tradition
oh,
for movement
yeah.
here, yeah.
Right.
That's great. Upcoming projects that you're involved in directly?
Well, this is a very unusual year. I might just be experimenting on my company, but I've commissioned a man named John Fleming, who's in town from New York for a year, to write and choreograph a play on me. And it's going to be an expanded one-woman show that's going to be anywhere between, I think it's going to be about an hour. So it's an entirely new and extremely challenging venture.
Well, I
for
can
me.
imagine, and you're putting a lot of yourself into the hands of this other creative person now to
Right.
wrap this around you.
We're, kind of co-writing it, and I'm doing a lot of the choreography, but he has the final say in the overall picture.
Do you have a spot in mind where you'd like to perform this, or something in your mind where you're thinking, I'd really like to do this?
Well, I know where I'm going to start it out, at the studio that my partners are in called Space, and that's where we do blah, blah, blah.
Good transition. Okay, now where is that, and what is that?
It's located near 10th and Portland.
Okay.
It's in downtown Minneapolis, and it's a studio that it took us about 2 months to, clean it up and polish it up and paint it and wash it and redo the floors.
What had it been? Or do we want to know?
I
Some
think
raw space, I
an
take it.
upholstery kind of a place.
really?
Yeah, of furniture. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It had been abandoned for quite some time.
Okay, so you've cleaned that up, and now what do you do there that's called blah, blah, blah?
It's a Monday night cabaret series, and it happens once every 2 months, and it's not quite a part of the late night series. It starts at 8:30, so it's a half hour later than normal. And what we do is invite the public in at about 7:30 to watch us put it together, and we put it together in an hour. And it's everything. It's any art. It's any performance art that exists is
Okay, so
invited.
dance and movement may be a big part of it, but it's not limited to that at all.
Right.
And you've got a couple partners.
Yeah, Sean McConaughey and Paula Mann.
And how did you team up with these folks?
Sort of by accident. We each do our own work, and our own work is all very different from each other. It's not what you would call a like-minded philosophy or anything like that, but we just went into business together to try and make a three-headed thing work easier than a one-headed thing.
And so far, so good.
Yeah.
Who's coming to this? So what kind of audiences are you getting on an
Wow.
8:30 Monday night?
Well, we offer some beverages and some things to eat, so people just. It's a party. It's called a party. Let's see. How do we say it? A party performance extravaganza.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
Now
And then we have a house band, and they play before, during, and after, and so they stay around for about an hour, and people dance on the dance floor.
So it sounds like this
afterwards.
goes towards midnight or so.
Yeah.
So it is kind of late
Yeah.
night. Sounds like a lot of fun.
It is fun.
Who came up with blah, blah, blah?
Well, we sat around at Fagery's one night, and we're trying to figure out a title, and we went, it's going to be this Monday night, blah, blah, blah. And we all went, okay. All of a sudden, we just, kind of looked at each other and said, oh, I dare us to do that. Because we kept saying, blah, blah, blah. What is this? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, it's blah, blah, blah.
And that's what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you have to say it kind of fast, otherwise it sounds kind of blah.
Sure. Now, at the end of this show that we're talking on right now, there'll be a calendar mentioning that it's August 10th.
Right.
Do you know the street address? I think we've got that on the calendar.
609 10th Street.
Okay, that rings a bell. Anyhow, they'll see it at the end of the show. So what might maybe you don't even know yet who's going to show up and do it. Are you going to have a piece in there?
I'm going to show the first 5 minutes of this play I've just been talking about.
Okay.
It's untitled, but it's based on a character who's announcing the end of the patriarchy. And
Just announcing it.
announcing it,
Okay,
yeah.
good
it's
for a
gonna-
start. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Dr. Lucy is her name. And we have, I don't have that list with me, and I'm not the person doing the calendar this time, so I just offhand, I know Lori Van Weeren, Tim Herwig, we've got a gospel singer, we've got a tap group coming.
Sounds like an
Sean is doing a group piece, a lot of.
eclectic.
Oh, yeah.
and
A
lot of fun.
storyteller.
That sounds good. Okay. I wanted to shift gears. We've got about a minute or two left, and I want to just ask, because of your interest in dance and movement and things artistic, it's always important that not only audiences get trained, but the next generation of dancers and the young people. Do you have any impression of how things are out there in dance education and the training? And I don't know if this relates to how you got started, but how are things in the 1990s for young people that might be interested in growing up to do the kinds of things you're doing professionally?
Well, I hesitate to say this because I think it's almost changing as I say this, but it's a lot less passionate than it used to be in the 70s. I think the 80s were, put a little bit of a downer on the arts and, the Jesse Helms thing and all those voices being heard
So it kind of
loud and
chilled a
clear.
bit.
Yeah, and money is, I think, a little more of an issue with the generations that are coming up or have come up. That's not across the board true, but in general, I think there's an increase in concern with money, so the arts it doesn't have that religious fervor that I remember having in the 70s,
Okay.
the time I got involved.
Well, it's a good answer, but a one with a little caution involved there.
Yeah.
So, well, George, it's been nice to get to know you a little bit, and I
thanks.
hope people will make an effort to get out to blah, blah, blah every other month on
On a Monday always.
always on a Monday,
Right.
but every other month.
Right.
Thanks so much for being on the show.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions about what we talked about, whether it was with Georgia or Dudley, you can call the Cable 34 hotline, 673-2234, and probably get your voice recorded. Now, next month, we're going to start a new feature here called Art News. So look forward to that, about changes in personnel or major projects or things that might be happening in the arts in Minneapolis. So tune in again, watch the show. I'm Phill Lindsay.